that it doesn't do economic damage, then it doesn't do any good to the climate because it doesn't deter anyone from emitting carbon. If, on the other hand, you set it high, then you transfer all your jobs to China, which isn't going to have an ETS, I can tell you that for free, and their emissions per unit of production are higher than here, so your paradoxical effect is to increase the carbon emissions of the world.
That's
that
an emissions
bonkers.
trading scheme. That's not the same as generally believing in climate change and saying, well, whatever else, whatever model, however else you do it, let's see if we can make the planet
cleaner. All right,
cleaner.
then let's quote Herr Ziegler, who is the Right to Food rapporteur of the UN, who has said that when millions are dying of starvation, the diversion of food to biofuels as one of the precautions that's being taken in the name of this global warming scare is, and these are his words, a crime against humanity.
I actually agree with you, and lots of people agree with you about biofuel, but then that's nothing to do with climate change.
Well, hang on a moment. That's the reason why the biofuel thing has been introduced.
Well,
now, what I'm saying is you have to look at each individual precaution, such as biofuels, such as an ETS, and work out whether it has anything to offer or whether it's going to do harm. The ETS does harm, the biofuels does harm. What would you now like to suggest?
But solar power, a massive investment in renewable energies instead of relying, for instance, on fossil fuels.
Every analysis shows that they have an extremely limited availability. If you have more than 5% of your grid generated by wind power, let us say, the grid becomes unstable because the wind changes. Likewise, solar power tends to be in areas where people don't need that much power, and you've therefore got to transmit it. You get huge transmission losses and environmental damage in putting the lines in. So all of these things are problematical. Nuclear power would be one way to go, but then the very same people who are arguing we need to save the planet from carbon dioxide are also, on the whole, not very keen on nuclear power.
Rupert.
Well, Christopher's got some kind of bizarre comments that have been put in there, and it's hard to know where to start. I mean, on wind power, for example, we have examples in Denmark where 20% of the energy is currently coming from...
And they export most of it.
Please, fewer interruptions.
Yeah, and we're seeing even in South Australia with a very large percentage of the electricity that is generated there comes from wind power. So that's... I'm quite happy to talk if you want to allow me. So that's simply not true. But the question is, if somebody doesn't believe in climate change, I find it kind of strange that they're then arguing what sorts of policies we should be using to deal with an issue that they don't believe is there. But on the issue of China, I think this is really interesting because we've been working with the Chinese government and Chinese businesses for a number of years now, and there has been an absolute transformation. They now produce 50% of the solar hot water heaters in the world. They are producing more of the wind turbines anywhere in the world. They are developing all of the technologies. Cars built in Australia can't go on the road in China because they don't meet the fuel efficiency standards. So one of the challenges for us is, do we take Christopher's view and say, let's not deal with anything we're not certain about the science? Or do we...
Rupert, China, as you know, is heavily dependent on coal. It's the filthiest industrial environment in the world. It's belching out every day, probably more than we release in a year into the environment.
Absolutely, and that's why they're transforming their economy. They're not there yet.
But you can't put them on the top of the pedestal and say, here's an example of wonderful global practice.
Well, the amount of money that they spent in the as part of the stimulus that was happening around the world, they put more of their money into green initiatives than almost any other country in the world. Why are they doing it? Because they recognise that the economy is going to change. They're not there yet. We're not going to pretend
for a moment. They can make money out of the fact that other people think the economy, the global climate is going to change.
Absolutely. And if we don't do that, we are going to be left behind because the world knows that this is an issue. They know that there are solutions. Do we want to be part of it, or do we want to stick our heads in the sand?
Okay, 13 minutes to 9 on 774 ABC Melbourne. Let's get some callers into the discussion as well. Rupert Posner from the Climate Group and Lord Monkton, who's a climate skeptic and travelling around Australia to do exactly what he's doing today. Ask people to think again. Rod in Doveton. Morning, Rod.
Oh, good morning. Yeah, I just got something pretty simple to say, and that's we only have one chance at it. Whichever party's right, we don't get another take at the whole thing. If this guy's actually wrong, we're stuffed. If he's right, all we've got is a cleaner planet.
So have you got a question?
No, that's a statement. The logic to me is pretty obvious, and these guys that talk that there's nothing happening is just total nonsense. I guess they get a moment of glory and running around the place being, attracting attention. So that's all I've got to say.
Lord Monkton, what if you're wrong?
If I'm wrong, I'll be very surprised, of course. But even if I am wrong, if you put in policies as lunatic as the biofuel policy, as lunatic as the ETS policy, you will not improve matters. One has to take a mature and sensible look at this. What the Chinese have decided to do, and this is in their annual statistical communiques, is to continue to build one or two coal-fired power stations every week for the foreseeable future. Why? Because the quickest way to lift their people out of poverty, stabilise their population thereby, is to provide them with the cheapest energy around, which is fossil-fuelled.
And at the same time, though, you've said nuclear energy. If you concede there might be an issue of any kind, of any dimension, what do you do about it other than turning to relying more on nuclear fuel rather than other forms of energy?
Well, the first thing you have to do is to quantify the risk rather than just saying, oh, carbon dioxide causes warming, which it does, and therefore there's a risk. No, you have to work out how much warming the carbon dioxide causes. That's been done by a number of different methods now, and it's 1/7 of what the UN thinks it is.
Brad in Williamstown. Morning, Brad.
Yeah, good morning, John. I'd just like to remind the listeners about the interview you did last year with the New Zealand economist who approached the whole situation objectively, and what he discovered is that none of the climate change denialists have a coherent message, whether it's Ian Plimer or Lord Monckton. They're all coming from different angles, and there's nothing coherent about it.
Yes. And this was, I've forgotten his name, but he and his son had built a business and made a couple of $100 million, and he decided to use his money to try and interview everybody he could on Earth and find out who knew what. And,
I can't remember his name either.
No, but they put out a book and said in the end, look, can't quite tell, but it's probably true.
It's called Poles Apart, Getting Beyond the Shouting on Climate Change.
That's it.
And what the denialist camp needs to do is basically put up some peer-reviewed science, or please just go away and let us get along with the job.
Lord Monckton?
Pinker et al., 2005. A radiative forcing from cloud cover reduction between 1983 and 2001, which was 3 watts per square metre. The entire radiative forcing caused by human activities, according to the UN, from 1750 until 2005 was 1.6 watts per square metre. Linson and Choi, 2009, measuring the relationship between outgoing radiation and temperature at the Earth's surface, finding that nearly all the outgoing radiation is escaping to space much as it always has, therefore not causing warming down here. Douglas and Knox, 2009, showing no net accumulation of heat energy in the oceans for the last 68 years. I could go on, but it might be rather boring. There are very large numbers of papers now in the scientific literature, Spencer and Braswell, 2008, on the clouds again, that show perfectly clearly that the UN has exaggerated the warming effect of CO2, and there are further such papers in the pipeline.
Rupert?
Yeah, well, Christopher knows that these are... the things he's talking about are not peer-reviewed. They're not scientific.
Every single one is peer-reviewed.
Hang on, less interruptions.
Okay. So they've been discredited. There is overwhelming evidence that human activity is causing climate change and that we need to do something about it. The issue is that there are a whole range of benefits if we take up action to deal with climate change. The US government and Obama, energy security, there are all sorts of very strong reasons why we get benefits from it. Companies also save quite a lot